Good day, New Zealand, Australia, United Kingdom, and wherever you may be. I hope your holiday break has been most enjoyable and you're all set to start the new year with enthusiasm. Part of my message is, as usual, to try and convince you to decide to become active and contact your MPs and give them your opinion as to where you think we should be heading. Be reinvigorated and oppose the instructions that these people are obeying from their masters and make them listen to you, who really are the controlling voice they ought to be listening to. After all, you are paying their wages. Our usual news is full of crocodile tears as usual and endless lies. Where is the concern for the human rights issues that are forever put before us as the excuse for intervention in countries all over the world, and criticisms of countries where human rights are not being observed? And what right do we have to decide who should be laying down the rules for these countries other than themselves? If we looked after our own affairs better, it would keep us fully occupied. One of the criticisms I have of what is going on in Ukraine is, and our reaction to it, is simply this. At the moment, the Ukrainian army and government is busy recruiting teenagers. They're running so short of manpower that they are forced to start recruiting 15 and 16-year-olds. Where is the voice of concern from our oh so caring politicians, who are the first to speak up on human rights issues in every country other than the ones being controlled by the USA and, in this case, NATO? There's no reality to the reporting that we hear on our news. Just more lies and increasing censorship. We no longer hear of any news that is countering the I'm lost for a word. Narrative is unsatisfactory, but the best I can come up with. We hear nothing of what's happening in Europe. The upheaval there, the pushback by the ordinary people in the street, the ordinary citizens all over Europe, the UK and the USA, whose opinion on these issues are entirely at opposition to the people who are running the country, the elitists, the globalists, the neocons. These are the same people, remember, that run us and gave us the failures of Iran, Vietnam, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan. The same people who organised the situations that developed there with the same objective to create a regime change and to create a political scene that supports their own greed and corruption. These are the same people that are guiding the actions that are taking place in Ukraine, which we support fully. We have manpower from our army in England training Ukrainian soldiers so they can go and die in their thousands fighting a futile war that was organised on their behalf, not for their good, but as they are thrown into the pot to be boiled down for the good of the neocons and political elites living in the USA and the UK and EU countries. They retain control of us by their complete control of the bureaucracy that makes up the deep state, and they will object to that label, but it's actual fact. The bureaucracy and the media that are under their full control and feed us with the information that they want us to have and no other. The USA, UK and EU are pursuing a path to economic and political destruction. Most of the citizenship of those countries are aware of this, and like the citizens here in New Zealand are refraining from making their positions known emphatically enough to their representatives, thereby allowing the representatives to meekly follow along the orders they get from above them in the political hierarchy that they bow down to. Right now in America, there's a great upheaval going on in the Senate over the Speaker of the House, which will be with the retirement of Nancy Pelosi, having been elected out of office by the midterm elections. Mitch McConnell is determined to have his way. He is the one of the elitists that have led the USA into the war with Russia. And he sides with Biden's Democratic Party wholeheartedly. They're indistinguishable. The term that they're using in America at the moment is a uni-party, and we could apply it here for that matter, where you've got two parties in theory, but in practice they're one. They act as one. The majority of the people would wish for a change. They want a Speaker of the House who is unbiased and who is willing to listen to the wishes of the people who, after all, are the ones that should be being followed. Their directives are not being listened to and haven't been for many, many years, and they are very tired of it. The majority of the citizens of America support the Trump. Not Trump personally so much, I think, as the ideas that Trump represents, owing to the fact that he is not a dyed-in-the-wool politician steeped in the corruption that denotes the political machinations that go on in the USA. And he therefore is hated because he is seen as a threat to the continuation of this ruling by the few, for the few, of the few. The USA, like it or not, is losing its ability to control the events of the world. The unipolar world has gone and a multipolar world has evolved. This is going to have momentous differences and effects in our world as we go into 2023. Many of the people who are knowledgeable about the economy and politics see 2023 as a watershed year in which major events economically and politically are about to happen. What do our so-called leaders think? Well, in my opinion, they don't. They simply obey. They don't listen to us. They don't think for themselves. They receive their instructions from the same people that led us into the calamities that I mentioned earlier. Now, there's a good example of this operating that is such that can't be denied by anybody, whichever side of the fence you sit. There is a different system of exchange of economic power, money, that has taken place, and it's called BRICS. Most of you would have heard of this. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa have formed a bloc to oppose the SWIFT system of payments, which is totally dependent upon the dollar. Many countries now are trading all sorts of commodities, and increasingly more and more are trading even oil in currencies away from the dollar. Many countries are lining up to join BRICS and pull out of the SWIFT system, thanks to the USA and the UK and the EU virtually stealing the money of USA, Afghanistan and other countries that were being held in the Central Reserve. Billions upon billions of dollars were simply pirated out from under the population that owned them, the countries that owned them. And people have had enough of it. They don't trust, and they've got no right to trust anymore, the system that's being run by the unipolar world, and that is now disintegrating before your very eyes. Most of the Middle East countries, the Arab countries, are about to join BRICS. Most of African countries will, and the bulk of the Eastern countries. Already, the number of people who support the BRICS stance on the trading of currencies is 3.2 billion, as opposed to the 1.2 billion who support SWIFT. So the political direction that the USA and our Judas goats are rushing to retain and grimly hold on, because it represents their means of political and economic power over the rest of us, most of them are giving up. The countries that are deciding for themselves are joining BRICS and are looking towards a multipolar world where our Judas goats are grimly sticking. I would liken it to booking their seats on the Titanic. Without some lateral thinking, without some independent thinking, without applying some sovereignty to our affairs in our own country, and seeking diplomatic agreements with all countries, rather than slavish obeyment of the rules of the USA. My final comment today is a suggestion that would be, I think, well worth putting to our politicians. Pick up your phones, hop onto your keyboards on your emails, send them off and ask this. It's well worth going for. The government now owns 100% of Kiwi Bank. And I read recently, this isn't my idea, but I full-heartedly support it. Use Kiwi Bank instead of Westbank for our government banking. At present, all profits are going to Australia-owned bank, that's Westpac, because they are the bankers for our government. They handle the inland revenue accounts. They handle the cheque accounts, what used to be the cheque accounts. That dates me, doesn't it? And so instead of the profits of the banking system that would evolve if all these transactions were being put through our nationally owned bank, the Kiwi Bank, at the present they line the pockets of the overseas shareholders. Can anybody tell me why that should be? We've got 120 MPs supposedly representing our interests, and I've not heard that idea come from one of them. That how about we shift our banking from the Westpac to Kiwi Bank, which we all own and which the profits of would return to our country, not the profits of the people who own the shares of the banks of Australia. That's my first thoughts for 2023. As usual, very badly expressed. I'm sorry for that. I wish I was as eloquent as the best of them. But what you see is what you get. Unfortunately, my message is being delivered by a very wounded pigeon. All the best to you for the new year, and I hope everything goes well for you and that you are happy in your lives, and I hope we will meet again to talk soon. All the best, good luck, cheerio.